December 17, 1962 began as an ordinary winter day in Vineland, New Jersey, but it would soon become a date remembered by the entire community, especially the Jones family. The morning started routinely for the Jones household. William Ebenezer Jones Sr., Billy's father, left early for his job at the New York Shipbuilding Company in Camden, about 30 miles away. Evelyn Jones, Billy's mother, had a busy morning planned with her children. She bundled up 3-year-old Billy and his younger sister, Jill, who was about 2 years old, for a series of errands. Their first stop was the bank. Following this, Evelyn took Billy for a haircut. Upon returning home, the children were eager to play outside despite the chilly December air. Billy, described as a lively boy with blondish brown hair and bright blue eyes, wore a light blue-gray snowsuit with a navy collar and distinctive silver buttons. His feet were clad in tan high-top sneakers with yellow laces, a detail that his mother would later recall with painful clarity. As the children prepared to go outside, Evelyn gave Billy a dime to keep in his pocket. Around 11:45 a.m., a neighbor reported seeing Billy playing alone outside their house. The neighbor, sensing that the young boy shouldn't be by himself, suggested that the child return home. This would be the last confirmed sighting of Billy. Meanwhile, Evelyn was inside the house, dividing her attention between household chores and keeping an eye on the children through the kitchen window. The family's 2 dogs were also outside. As the morning wore on, Evelyn momentarily stepped away from the window to tend to her youngest son in another room. It was during this brief moment that the ordinary day took a devastating turn. When she returned to the kitchen, the scene outside had changed irrevocably. At approximately 1 p.m., she heard a knock at the door. Opening it, she found Jill standing alone on the doorstep. In her small hands, Jill clutched a plastic potted poinsettia. The sight made Evelyn pause momentarily, but it was Jill's words that would haunt the family for years to come. When asked about Billy's whereabouts, Jill uttered the phrase, "The boogeyman took him." The search began around 2 p.m., approximately an hour after Billy's mother realized he was missing. The delay in notifying authorities, while understandable given the initial hope that Billy might simply have wandered off, would later be scrutinized as potentially crucial lost time. Nevertheless, once alerted, the Vineland Police Department sprang into action, quickly mobilizing all available resources. Within hours, the search effort had grown exponentially. More than 500 people, some traveling from as far as Philadelphia, converged on Vineland to aid in the search. Vineland High School, in a surprising move, allowed any student who wanted to participate in the search to take the day off from school, further swelling the ranks of volunteers. The search operation covered land, water, and air. The New Jersey National Guard was called in, bringing with them additional manpower and resources that significantly expanded the search capabilities. The search extended to every conceivable location within and around Vineland. Wooded areas and swamplands were combed through, with searchers leaving no stone unturned. The Palace of Depression, an abandoned automobile dump that had once been a local tourist attraction, received particular attention. This landmark not far from the Jones family home was thoroughly searched. Investigators even went so far as to dig up the grounds of the palace to no avail. Mayor Henry Garton took to the radio, issuing an appeal for information and galvanizing the community's efforts. Despite the extensive efforts, no trace of Billy was found. One of the earliest clues in the case was the plastic poinsettia that Billy's sister was holding when she returned home alone. Initially, this seemed to be a significant lead, with reports suggesting that someone had been selling these flowers in the neighborhood shortly before the disappearance. This led to speculation about a possible connection between a flower vendor and Billy's vanishing. However, this lead ultimately proved to be a dead end. Investigators later discovered that the plastic flower had simply been retrieved from a neighbor's trash and had been passed around by several local children. The family's basset hound, named Baby Cakes, provided another puzzling clue. The dog was initially missing along with Billy, but was later found a short distance from the home, inexplicably soaking wet. This detail sparked numerous theories and speculations. Some wondered if Billy had accidentally fallen into a nearby body of water, possibly Little Robin Branch, and the dog had tried to save him. Others theorized that the boy might have gone into the water after the dog. The family noted that Billy would have done anything for baby cakes, lending credence to these particular theories. Investigators searched nearby bodies of water, but no evidence of Billy was found. Another significant theory revolved around the trash collection that occurred in the area on the day of Billy's disappearance. Investigators learned that there had been a trash pickup between 1:30 p.m. and 2 p.m. This information opened up a grim possibility. Authorities considered whether Billy could have crawled into a trash bin, or even more disturbingly, whether he could have been the victim of foul play and disposed of in this manner. The trash collectors were thoroughly questioned, but they insisted they hadn't seen the boy and would have noticed if a child had been emptied into their truck. Despite their assurances, investigators took the extraordinary step of searching the local landfill. However, this search, like many others, yielded no results. As the investigation progressed without any substantial leads, the Jones family turned to alternative methods for answers. They consulted a local psychic, hoping for insights that traditional investigative methods had failed to provide. The psychic offered a theory that would give the family hope for years to come. She claimed that Billy was still alive and had been abducted by a man whose wife was experiencing a mental breakdown due to the death of her own toddler son. The theory suggested that Billy had been taken to an Amish area in Pennsylvania and was being raised by a new family. However, investigators were skeptical of this theory. They pointed out that as Billy grew older, he would likely have memories of his real family and would have informed somebody of his true identity. In 1964, approximately 2 years after Billy's disappearance, another local psychic offered a different and more tragic theory. They told investigators that the boy had been struck and killed by someone who did not intend to harm him. According to this theory, the person responsible had panicked and buried Billy in a nearby area. The psychic even provided investigators with a description of the man's car and appearance. Despite this detailed information, no evidence was found to corroborate this theory and no arrests were made. One of the most intriguing developments in the case came years later when Billy's sister underwent hypnosis in an attempt to recover more memories from the day of her brother's disappearance. Under hypnosis, Jill recalled a vivid and disturbing scene. She described holding hands with Billy as they witnessed two men fighting in front of an oil drum fire at the Palace of Depression. Jill's recollection included the detail of running away from the scene. "I remember running and eventually I could see the door to my house," she said. This memory led to renewed interest in the palace as a potential crime scene. Investigators theorized that Billy could have wandered into it or possibly been hit by a car and disposed of there. But as I shared earlier, no evidence was found at the location. In 2009, police detective Christian Kirchner reopened the case, leveraging advancements in DNA technology and investigative techniques. The FBI released age-progressed photos of Billy to show what he might look like as an adult, hoping to generate new leads. Jill provided a DNA sample which has been submitted to various databases in hopes of finding a match. As of January 2025, the case remains unsolved, marking over 6 decades since Billy's disappearance. It stands as one of the oldest missing children cases for those under 5 years old in New Jersey. The FBI and local authorities continue to seek information that could lead to resolving this long-standing mystery. The case has garnered renewed interest in recent years, thanks to advancements in forensic science, the power of social media, and the persistent efforts of cold case detectives. While no breakthrough has been made, the hope remains that someday the truth about Billy's fate will come to light. On November 10, 1975, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, a Great Lakes freighter, sank in Lake Superior during a severe storm, resulting in the loss of all 29 crew members. The vessel measures 729 feet in length, 75 feet in width, and 39 feet in height. Launched on June 7, 1958, she was designed to carry taconite pellets, a form of processed iron ore, from mines near Duluth, Minnesota to ironworks in Detroit, Toledo, and other Great Lakes ports. For 17 years, the Fitzgerald had been a record-setting workhorse, often breaking her own milestones. In 1969, she set a record for a single-trip load of about 27,402 long tons. On the afternoon of November 9th, 1975, the ship departed from Superior, Wisconsin under the command of Captain Ernest M. McSorley. The ship was loaded with 26,000 long tons of taconite pellets bound for a steel mill on Zug Island near Detroit, Michigan. The Fitzgerald left port at approximately 2:15 p.m., quickly reaching full speed of about 16 miles per hour. As the Fitzgerald began her journey, she was soon joined by another freighter, the SS Arthur M. Anderson, captained by Jesse Bernie Cooper. The Anderson had departed from Two Harbors, Minnesota, and was destined for Gary, Indiana. The two ships made radio contact and would remain in communication throughout much of the voyage. At the time of departure, the weather forecast was not unusual for November on the Great Lakes. The National Weather Service had predicted that a storm would pass just south of Lake Superior by 7 a.m. on November 10th. However, as the ships progressed, the weather conditions began to deteriorate rapidly. By the evening of November 9th, gale warnings were issued for Lake Superior. The storm system that had formed in the southern plains was moving northeast and intensifying significantly. In response to the worsening forecast, Captains McSorley and Cooper agreed to alter their course, taking a more northerly route across Lake Superior. This decision was based on the belief that the highlands on the Canadian shore would offer some protection from the building storm. As November 10th dawned, the storm continued to intensify. By late afternoon, wind speeds had reached 50 knots, with the Anderson reporting hurricane-force winds of 75 knots. Wave heights were estimated to reach 25 to 35 feet. Captain McSorley would later describe these as one of the worst seas he had ever experienced in his long career. The severity of the storm became increasingly apparent as the day progressed. At approximately 3:30 p.m. on November 10th, McSorley radioed the Anderson with a troubling report. He informed them that the Fitzgerald had, quote, sustained some topside damage and was taking on water. Specifically, McSorley reported that a fence rail had been laid down, 2 vents were lost or damaged, and the ship had developed a list. Despite these issues, the captain seemed to believe the situation was manageable. When asked by the Anderson if the Fitzgerald's pumps were operating, McSorley confirmed that both pumps were indeed running. He requested that the Anderson stay nearby until the Fitzgerald could reach the relative safety of Whitefish Bay. The situation continued to deteriorate over the next hour. At around 4:10 p.m., Captain McSorley radioed the Anderson again, this time with even more concerning news. Both of the Fitzgerald's radars had failed, leaving the ship essentially blind in the turbulent storm. McSorley requested the Anderson's assistance with radar plots to help guide the Fitzgerald to Whitefish Bay. As the afternoon wore on, the Fitzgerald's troubles continued. The ship was unable to pick up the Whitefish Point radio beacon, which it was in dire need of. At approximately 4:39 p.m., the ship attempted to contact the Coast Guard station at Grand Marais on the emergency channel. Between 5:30 and 6 p.m., the Fitzgerald made contact with another vessel in the area, the Avafors. In this communication, Captain McSorley painted a grim picture of the conditions they were facing. He reported that the Fitzgerald had, quote, a bad list, lost both radars, and was taking heavy seas over the deck, one of the worst seas I've ever been in. Despite these challenges, the vessel continued to battle through the storm, making slow progress toward the hoped-for shelter of Whitefish Bay. The Anderson, still trailing behind, did its best to provide assistance and guidance through the storm. At approximately 7:10 p.m., the Anderson and the Fitzgerald had their final radio exchange. The Anderson asked how the Fitzgerald was doing under the current conditions. Captain McSorley's response was both brief and haunting. He said, "We are holding our own." These were the last words ever heard from the Edmund Fitzgerald or her crew. What exactly happened in the next 10 to 20 minutes remains a mystery. Sometime between 7:20 and 7:30 p.m., the Edmund Fitzgerald suddenly disappeared from the Anderson's radar. The ship, with its crew of 29, vanished into the depths of Lake Superior. The Fitzgerald's last known position was approximately 17 miles from the entrance to Whitefish Bay. She had been less than an hour's journey from relative safety at her top speed. Instead, she now lay broken in 2 pieces, 530 feet below the surface of Lake Superior. The sudden and complete nature of the Fitzgerald's sinking is particularly disturbing. No distress signal was ever sent. The ship went down so quickly that none of the crew had time to don life jackets or launch lifeboats. In the immediate aftermath of the sinking, the Anderson turned back into the dangerous storm to search for any signs of the Fitzgerald or her crew. Despite the extreme risk to his own vessel and crew, Cooper felt compelled to look for survivors. However, the search proved fruitless. The Edmund Fitzgerald and her entire crew had been lost to the depths of Lake Superior. All 29 crew members perished and no bodies were ever recovered. The wreck was later found broken in 2 pieces on the lake bottom, about 530 feet deep. As news of the Fitzgerald's disappearance spread, other vessels joined the search. The SS William Clay Ford ventured out from the shelter of Whitefish Bay to assist, braving the treacherous conditions. The United States Coast Guard was notified and began mobilizing resources. However, the initial response was hampered by several factors, including damaged communication antennas and the remote location of the incident. As the search continued through the night and into the following days, hope for survivors quickly diminished. The harsh reality of the situation became apparent as only debris was found. The searchers recovered lifeboats, life jackets, and other flotsam identified as belonging to the Fitzgerald. One of the most significant finds was a Switlik 25-man inflatable life raft, discovered floating upright near Coppermine Point. The search for the Fitzgerald's wreckage continued in the days following the sinking. Sonar equipment detected 2 large objects in the area where the ship was believed to have gone down. However, it wasn't until May 1976 that the wreck was definitively located and identified. The discovery of the wreck provided some answers, but also raised new questions. A US Navy Lockheed P-3 Orion aircraft located the wreckage approximately 15 miles west of Deadman's Cove, Ontario. Despite numerous investigations and studies over the decades, the exact cause of the sinking remains uncertain. Several theories have emerged, each supported by various pieces of evidence and expert opinions. One of the primary factors considered in all theories is the extreme weather conditions on the night of the incident. In 2005, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service conducted a comprehensive computer simulation of the weather and wave conditions during the period of the sinking. The simulation revealed that 2 separate areas of high-speed winds developed over Lake Superior at 4 p.m. on November 10th. One area had winds exceeding 43 knots, while the other had winds over 40 knots. The southeastern part of the lake, where the Edmund Fitzgerald was heading, experienced the highest winds. By 7 p.m., average wave heights had increased to nearly 19 feet, with winds exceeding 50 miles per hour over most of southeastern Lake Superior. The simulation indicated that 1 in every 100 waves could reach 36 feet, and 1 in every 1,000 could reach 46 feet. One theory involves the phenomenon known as rogue waves or Three Sisters. This hypothesis suggests that a sequence of 3 abnormally large waves, each about 1/3 larger than the surrounding waves, may have struck the Fitzgerald. Captain Cooper of the Arthur M. Anderson reported that his ship was hit by 2 massive waves at around 6:30 p.m., with one wave burying the aft cabins and damaging a lifeboat. Cooper believed that these waves, possibly followed by a third, continued in the direction of the Fitzgerald and may have struck it around the time it sank. The U.S. Coast Guard Marine Casualty Report, released on July 26, 1977, proposed that the accident was caused by ineffective hatch closures. This theory suggests that the hatch covers failed to prevent waves from gradually flooding the cargo hold throughout the final day of the voyage. This flooding would have resulted in a fatal loss of buoyancy and stability, causing the ship to suddenly plummet to the bottom without warning. However, this theory has been contested. Video footage of the wreck site showed that most of the hatch clamps were in perfect condition. The Coast Guard Marine Board concluded that the few damaged clamps were likely the only ones that had been fastened. Another theory proposes that the ship may have suffered from structural weaknesses, possibly exacerbated by modifications to its winter load line that allowed for heavier loading and lower travel in the water. This hypothesis suggests that the combination of an already weakened structure and the stress from large waves could have caused a catastrophic hull failure. Support for this theory comes from testimony by former crewmen. Richard Orgel, a former second mate who served on the Fitzgerald in 1972 and 1973, stated that the ship had a tendency to bend and flex during storms, like a diving board after somebody has jumped off. He believed that hull failure was the cause of the sinking, citing observations of stress in the side tunnels evidenced by cracking and splintering of white enamel paint. On October 17, 2003, a young couple from Scottsdale, Arizona set out on what was meant to be a romantic overnight camping trip to celebrate their one-year anniversary. Instead, it became the scene of a brutal double homicide that remains unsolved 2 decades later. The murders of 19-year-old Lisa Guerrieri and 20-year-old Brandon Rumbaugh, known as the Bumblebee Road murders, continue to baffle investigators and haunt the victims' families. Lisa was born in 1984 and was described as a vibrant and energetic young woman with a bright future ahead of her. She worked as a secretary for the Salt River Project, a local utility company in Phoenix, where she was known for her diligence and friendly demeanor. Colleagues remembered her for her infectious smile and ability to light up a room with her presence. Lisa had a close-knit family and was particularly close to her mother, Paula, with whom she shared a deep bond. The year 2003 had already been a challenging one for Lisa and her family. Earlier that year, she had lost her father to cancer. In the wake of this loss, Lisa's uncle Mike had taken on a paternal role in her life, providing support and guidance. This family dynamic would later play a role in the events surrounding her disappearance and the subsequent investigation. Brandon Rumbaugh, 20 years old at the time of his death, was a student at Arizona State University. Along with going to school, Brandon worked as a personal trainer in his extra time. He had previously served in the Marine Reserves, but was medically discharged due to a knee injury. This experience in the military had instilled in him a sense of discipline and camaraderie that was evident in his relationships with friends and family. Those who knew Brandon from his childhood described him as a happy and goofy kid, traits that he carried into his adult life. He had a passion for the performing arts, having been involved in dance and music during his high school years. Lisa and Brandon's relationship was relatively new but intense. They had been dating for exactly 1 year at the time of their deaths. Friends and family often remarked on how well suited they were for each other, with Brandon treating Lisa, quote, like a queen. Many of the couple's friends also commented on how the two seemed like an ideal couple. They had recently taken a significant step in their relationship by moving in together in Scottsdale. Additionally, the two had been recently engaged to each other. Brandon had proposed to Lisa, and they were in the early stages of planning the rest of their lives together, full of hope and excitement for what lay ahead. Initially, the couple had planned to celebrate their anniversary at Disneyland. However, being mindful of their finances, they opted for a more modest but no less meaningful celebration. They decided to go on a camping trip. The chosen location, an area off Bumblebee Road about an hour north of Phoenix, was known for its stargazing. In preparation for their trip, Lisa and Brandon borrowed a white Ford F-150 pickup truck from Lisa's mother. They also took along a video camera belonging to Paula, intending to document their celebration. Before leaving, Lisa made a specific request to her mother not to inform her uncle Mike about their destination. This request stemmed from Lisa's awareness of her uncle's concerns about the area's reputation as a party spot. On October 17, 2003, the two set out for their trip. The couple's last known actions involve stopping by a grocery store in Scottsdale to purchase a disposable camera. This simple act of buying a camera would later provide investigators with crucial evidence and the last known images of Lisa and Brandon alive. As they set out on their journey, Lisa's mother called to check on them. During this call, Lisa mentioned that they were not yet at their destination and still had many miles to go. Everything seemed normal during this conversation, with no hint of the tragedy that was to unfold. The exact timeline of events after this phone call remains unclear, as there were no known witnesses to the couple's activities that night. However, based on the evidence gathered by investigators, some details about their final hours have been pieced together. It's believed that Lisa and Brandon arrived at their chosen campsite off Bumblebee Road sometime in the evening. The location was approximately 2 miles west of Interstate 17, in a dirt parking area that was popular among campers and off-road enthusiasts. The remoteness of the area, while perfect for stargazing, also meant that the couple was isolated from potential help or witnesses. The morning of October 18th began with growing concern for the families of Lisa and Brandon. The young couple had failed to return from their overnight camping trip as planned, and their absence was immediately noticed. Brandon was expected at work that morning, and his failure to show up was out of character for the responsible 20-year-old. As the hours passed without any word from Lisa or Brandon, anxiety began to mount. Lisa's mother started calling around, trying to locate the couple. The lack of communication was especially worrying, given that Lisa had been in touch with her mother the previous day during their drive to the campsite. Paula's instinct was telling her something was wrong, a feeling she would later describe as overwhelming. By early afternoon, it became clear that more decisive action was needed. A search party was hastily organized, consisting of family members and 3 of Brandon's friends. The group was aware of the general area where the two had planned to camp, but the vastness of the desert landscape presented a daunting challenge. The search party set out, driving north on Interstate 17. They would exit at various off-ramps, drive around the surrounding areas, and then return to the highway if they found nothing. This process was repeated multiple times as they made their way north, their hopes rising and falling with each new location. Commander Tom Bolts of the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office later described the search efforts. They started driving up Interstate 17. I believe they went up all the way into Coconino County and drove around. They knew it was somewhere pretty close to the interstate, and so they would get off at an off-ramp, drive around. They didn't find them, and they kept doing that until they got down to Bumblebee Road. The persistence of the search party would ultimately lead to a grim discovery. At approximately 3:30 p.m. on October 18th, the group of Brandon's friends arrived at a dirt parking area off Bumblebee Road. This location was about 2 miles west of Interstate 17 in a remote part of Yavapai County. As they approached the area, they spotted a familiar sight: the white Ford pickup truck that Lisa had borrowed from her mother for the camping trip. The truck was parked in a sandy area just off the road, seemingly undisturbed. At first glance, nothing appeared out of the ordinary, which may have momentarily raised hopes that Lisa and Brandon were simply exploring the area. However, as the friends drew closer to the vehicle, they noticed something in the bed of the truck. To their horror, they realized that the sleeping bags in the uncovered truck bed were occupied. Inside these sleeping bags were the bodies of Brandon and Lisa. At first, the friends thought the two might be sleeping. It was only upon closer inspection that the terrible truth became clear. The friends, now faced with this horrifying scenario, knew they needed to alert authorities immediately. They quickly left the scene to flag down a nearby police officer. As news of the discovery spread, the full weight of the tragedy began to settle on the families and friends of Lisa and Brandon. What had started as a celebration of young love had ended in an unthinkable act of violence. The remote location that was meant to provide a romantic getaway had instead become the scene of a brutal double homicide. The sheriff's office quickly took charge of the investigation. Initial observations at the scene provided some immediate, albeit limited, information. Both Lisa and Brandon had sustained multiple gunshot wounds to the head and torso. The presence of the sleeping bags suggested that the couple might have been attacked while sleeping or preparing to sleep. As detectives combed the area, they made a significant discovery about 40 yards away from the truck. A disposable camera, which the couple had purchased for their trip, was found broken in half near some rocks. This camera would prove to be a vital piece of evidence, providing investigators with some of the last images of Lisa and Brandon alive. 2 of these photos showed Lisa and Brandon separately, sitting in the bed of the truck, smiling and seemingly enjoying their anniversary celebration. These images are believed to be the last photos taken of the couple alive, capturing moments of happiness just before their lives were tragically cut short. A third photo from the camera added an element of mystery to the case. It was an overexposed image showing a light fixture inside a building. Investigators initially speculated that this might have been taken inside a restaurant in the town of Bumblebee, which has since been converted into a different business. However, the exact location and significance of this photo remain unclear to this day. Interestingly, it was said that the Lisa had also borrowed a video camera from her mother. This other camera was never found, but its case was located inside the truck. The autopsy, performed on Monday, October 20th, provided more detailed information about the murders. It determined that Lisa and Brandon had been killed sometime between 7 p.m. on Friday, October 17th, and 8 a.m. on Saturday, October 18th. The murder weapon was identified as a .25 caliber handgun, an unusual choice for this type of crime due to its small caliber and relative rarity. The exact model of the firearm has never been disclosed publicly, likely a piece of information withheld by investigators to help verify potential leads or confessions. As the investigation progressed, detectives explored various theories and leads. One early theory suggested that the murders might have been committed by someone known to the couple, possibly motivated by jealousy. Lisa's family, in particular, suspected that someone they knew might have been involved. One specific angle within this theory focuses on one of Brandon's friends. This individual reportedly had strong romantic feelings for Lisa. The theory suggests that jealousy could have been a motive for the murders. Adding to the suspicion, this friend was part of the group that discovered the bodies. Shortly after the murders, he allegedly packed up his home and left the state, leaving his residence completely empty when investigators arrived. It's worth noting that this friend was later given a polygraph test which he passed and was subsequently cleared as a suspect. However, a detective on the case has stated that the individual should not have been ruled out based solely on the polygraph results and expressed a desire to re-interview him. One of the other primary theories is that the murders were the result of a random attack. The theory suggests that someone may have stumbled upon the couple's truck, intending to steal it or its contents, and was surprised to find Lisa and Brandon sleeping in the back. This unexpected encounter could have led to the shootings. Supporting this theory is the remote location of the crime scene. Bumblebee Road, while known as a camping spot, was also reputed to be a party location. The area's isolation and reputation for illicit activities could have made it an attractive location for opportunistic criminals. The random attack theory gains some credence when considering a similar crime that occurred 6 months later near Crown King, Arizona. In this incident, 2 men were shot and their truck stolen. The suspect in that case, identified as Rusty Rankin, later committed suicide during a police standoff in Colorado Springs. While investigators have explored a possible connection between the 2 cases, no definitive link has been established. However, the random attack theory has its detractors. Lisa's family, in particular, does not believe the crime was random. The multiple gunshot wounds sustained by both victims and the fact that nothing of significant value appears to have been stolen aside from the video camera could suggest a more personal motive. On a different note, investigators learned of an argument between Brandon and an unidentified man at the couple's apartment the night before their camping trip. This man was described as being in his 40s, white, husky, and wearing a white t-shirt and blue jeans. While this lead hasn't been publicly connected to any specific suspect, it remains an intriguing detail that could potentially point to a known assailant. Another lead suggested a man named Michael Villers could have been involved. He was a 32-year-old Phoenix resident and his black Ford truck was reportedly seen near the crime scene. However, it's unclear from more recent reports whether he was ever considered a serious suspect or if this lead was thoroughly investigated and dismissed. One of the most intriguing pieces of evidence in the case is the overexposed photo found on the disposable camera at the crime scene. This photo has led to speculation about the couple's movements on the night of their murder. Did they stop at a local establishment? If so, did they encounter their killer there? Or did the killer take the photo after the murders, as some have theorized? While the significance of this photo remains unclear, it continues to be a focal point for investigators and amateur sleuths alike. The sheriff's office has stated that they are still trying to identify the location where this photo was taken. Oakey Albert Kite Jr., often referred to as Al, was born on May 7, 1951 in Nash County, North Carolina. He was the second child and only son of Oakey Kite Sr. and Edith Kite. Al grew up alongside his sister Barbara in Halifax County, a predominantly rural area in northeastern North Carolina known for its tobacco and cotton farming. Al's father was a well-respected figure in the local community. He had made a name for himself as a skilled dog trainer and was a co-founder of Oakey and Hunter Grove, a North Carolina-based dog training company. This entrepreneurial spirit and strong work ethic would later be reflected in Al's own career path. Tragedy struck the Kite family early in Al's life when his mother passed away in January 1970 at the age of 48. Al was only 18 years old at the time. Despite this significant loss, he persevered and continued to pursue his education and career goals with determination. It was during his high school years that Al met Gail Kay, a young woman who would later play a significant role in his life. The two formed a friendship that would endure beyond their high school days, setting the stage for a future relationship. After graduating from Weldon High School, Al decided to further his education by attending Atlantic Christian College in Wilson, North Carolina. In college, he pursued a degree in business administration, laying the foundation for his future career in finance and project management. In 1971, while still a college student, Al began what would become a 31-year career with Stone & Webster, a large engineering services company. He quickly moved up the ranks, transitioning from timekeeper to accountant and eventually becoming a department head at the Surrey nuclear plant. This rapid progression early in his career set the tone for Al's professional life, characterized by competence, reliability, and a strong work ethic. In 1976, 5 years after starting his career with Stone & Webster, Al's personal life took a significant turn when he married Gail. Despite the success in his career, Al's personal life faced challenges. In 1988, after 12 years of marriage, Al and Gail divorced. While the end of a marriage is often a difficult and painful process, reports suggest that their separation was amicable. The early 1990s marked another significant phase in Al's career. He was promoted to manager of accounting procedures, a role that saw him overseeing finances for multiple high-profile projects. In 1998, Al's life took another significant turn when he decided to move to Aurora, Colorado. This move was prompted by a new job opportunity, but it also aligned with his personal interests. Colorado's landscape and outdoor recreational opportunities were a major draw for Al, who had always enjoyed activities like golfing, hiking, and skiing. The move to Aurora represented not just a career advancement, but a lifestyle change that allowed Al to pursue his passions more actively. Upon moving to Aurora, Al purchased a townhouse on South Helena Street. The property, a 2-story home with a finished basement, would later play a crucial role in the tragic events that unfolded in 2004. Initially, Al lived alone in the townhouse. However, in 2002, he faced a significant professional setback. After more than 3 decades with Stone & Webster, he was let go during a company downsizing. This sudden change in his career trajectory was undoubtedly challenging for Al, who had dedicated most of his adult life to the company. However, he quickly found new employment with Carter & Burgess, a consulting firm in Denver. Around this time, Al made the decision to convert the basement of his townhouse into a rental apartment. This decision was partly motivated by the financial implications of his job change, as the additional rental income could help offset his expenses. Throughout his life, Al was known for his kind and trusting nature. His sister, Barbara Hannah, described him as very compassionate, very trusting, noting that these qualities, while admirable, may have ultimately contributed to the tragic events that would occur. Despite his successful career and friendly nature, Al never seemed to develop a large circle of close friends. This was likely due in part to the frequent moves his career demanded. However, he maintained strong connections with his family, particularly his sister Barbara and his stepdaughter Julie from his former marriage with Gail. As May 2004 approached, Al's life seemed stable and content. He had a job he enjoyed, a home he loved, a new relationship, and the ability to pursue his outdoor hobbies. The basement of his townhouse was rented out, providing additional income. However, in early May, Al's long-term tenant moved out, prompting him to advertise the basement apartment for rent. On May 18, 2004, a man calling himself Robert Cooper responded to Al's rental ad. Cooper presented himself as a professional from the East Coast, claiming to work for Wells Fargo Bank and stating that he was temporarily staying with his sister while looking for his own place. Al agreed to meet with Cooper to show him the basement apartment. Al's girlfriend, Linda Angelopoulos, briefly encountered Cooper during one of his visits to view the apartment. Though she didn't get a clear look at his face, she noted he was well dressed in nice pants and a suit jacket. This encounter would later prove crucial in piecing together the events leading up to the crime. On May 22nd, Al drove Linda to the airport for her trip to Virginia Beach. During the drive, he mentioned plans to make some repairs to the apartment and help Cooper move in some heavier items. This casual conversation would be one of the last Linda had with Al. Linda called Al when she landed around 3:30 p.m. on May 22nd. She later recalled that he seemed unusually quiet during the call, leading her to assume Cooper might have been present. This phone call is believed to be the last known contact anyone had with Al while he was still alive. The exact sequence of events following this phone call is unclear, but investigators believe that the attack on Al Kite began shortly after. Based on the evidence at the crime scene, it's theorized that Cooper struck Al from behind as he was walking down the stairs to the basement apartment. A wound on the back of Al's head supported this theory. What followed was a prolonged period of torture that investigators describe as one of the most brutal crime scenes they had ever encountered. Al was bound in a highly unusual and skilled manner. His hands were tied behind his back and his feet were bound to his wrist ligatures, effectively hog-tying him. The bindings were placed not just at the wrists and ankles, but also above the elbows, above the knees, and on the upper arms. This method of restraint rendered Al almost completely immobile, leaving him utterly helpless against his attacker. The killer then subjected Al to hours of excruciating torture. Using various sharp instruments, the assailant inflicted numerous wounds on Al's body. Detective Thomas Sobieski of the Aurora Police Department, one of the lead investigators on the case, described the scene as the worst he'd ever seen. Al had stab wounds above his eyes as well as in his eardrums. There was also severe beating and flogging of the soles of Al's feet. Interestingly, this method is typically associated with regions such as Turkey, which investigators used as a line of investigation. In total, Al suffered 22 stab wounds, which investigators believe were the final acts that ended his life. The level of violence and the specific methods of torture employed suggested to investigators that the killer either had extensive experience or had meticulously researched these techniques. Perhaps most disturbing was the killer's behavior after the murder. Instead of fleeing the scene immediately, Cooper displayed a level of comfort and control that was highly unusual. After killing Al, the perpetrator cleaned himself in Al's shower, changed into Al's clothing, ate food in the kitchen, and even slept in Al's bed. This behavior suggested that the killer remained in the house for an extended period, possibly up to 2 days. A neighbor's statement indicated that the killer likely left early Sunday morning, May 23rd. Before leaving, the killer undertook extensive efforts to clean the crime scene and destroy evidence. These actions included wiping down surfaces to remove prints, pouring bleach down the shower drain to destroy any forensic evidence, and submerging various items in bleach in the kitchen sink. These items included a drinking glass, over 6 knives, a pen, and Al's car keys. After leaving Al's residence, the killer continued to take actions that showed off his careful planning. He drove Al's blue and gray GMC pickup truck to a nearby Wells Fargo ATM. And wearing a ski mask and gloves to conceal his identity, he withdrew approximately $1,000 from Al's account. He made several purchases using Al's credit cards as well. The killer then abandoned the truck about a block and a half away from Al's home. Furthermore, Al's cell phone was later found, though it's unclear exactly when and where it was discarded. The crime went undiscovered until Monday, May 24th, when Al failed to show up for work. Concerned co-workers contacted Al's sister, who was listed as his emergency contact. She then called the Aurora Police Department to request a welfare check. When police entered his townhouse, they found no immediate signs of disturbance on the upper levels. It wasn't until they descended to the basement that they discovered the horrific crime scene. Al's body was found face down on the floor, surrounded by blood spatter on both the floor and walls. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the man claiming to be Robert Cooper had meticulously planned every aspect of the crime. In March 2004, 2 months before the murder, Cooper had purchased a prepaid phone from a 7-Eleven near the University of Colorado Hospital. He waited 30 days to activate the phone, ensuring that the store's surveillance footage, which was only kept for 30 days, would have been deleted by the time he used the phone. He used this phone exclusively to contact people renting properties, suggesting he may have been hunting for potential victims. Every piece of information Cooper provided on the rental agreement was false. The social security number belonged to an 80-year-old woman in Indiana, the address was for an elementary school in Denver, and the reference phone number was from an Aurora retirement village. The investigation also revealed that Cooper had approached other potential landlords before settling on Al as his victim. One woman who taught Romanian at a local university reported that when she met Cooper, quote, "the hair stood up on the back of her neck." She noted that he had a slight Romanian accent. Witness descriptions of the killer varied widely, suggesting he may have used disguises or had the ability to significantly alter his appearance. Age estimates range from late 20s to mid-50s, and some noted an accent, while others detected none. He sometimes used a cane and had a severe limp, but other witnesses saw no mobility issues. Understandably, this inconsistency in descriptions has made it challenging for investigators to create an accurate profile of the killer. The lack of a clear motive, the killer's meticulous planning, and the extreme violence of the crime have led to various hypotheses about the perpetrator's identity and motivations. One of the most prominent theories is that the killer was a professional hitman or assassin. This theory is supported by several aspects of the crime, including the meticulous planning, forensic awareness, binding techniques, torture methods, and Cooper's ability to blend in. Proponents of this theory speculate that Al may have been targeted due to his past work in in sensitive industries, including his time at Stone & Webster and his involvement with projects at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. However, no concrete connection has been established between his work and any potential motive for a professional hit. Another prominent theory is that Cooper was a serial killer. This theory is supported by apparent lack of motive, victim selection process, ritualistic elements, and the confidence/risk-taking involved. To elaborate, the extreme violence suggests a killer motivated by psychological gratification rather than any personal vendetta or financial gain. And the method of finding victims through rental advertisements and meeting with multiple potential targets indicates a calculated approach to selecting victims, a behavior often seen in serial offenders. The specific binding and torture methods could also be interpreted as part of a personal ritual, which is not uncommon among some serial killers. Additionally, the killer's behavior after the murder, including sleeping in Al's bed and eating his food, suggests a level of confidence and risk-taking often associated with experienced serial offenders. Some investigators have speculated that if Cooper is indeed a serial killer, there may be other similar cases that have not been connected due to the killer's ability to vary his methods or operate across different jurisdictions. A theory that gained traction among some true crime enthusiasts is the potential connection to Israel Keyes, a known serial killer who operated across the United States. This theory is based on several factors, including the similarities in modus operandi, physical resemblance, timeline consistency, and geographic range. Keyes was known for his meticulous planning, use of kill kits, and ability to commit crimes far from his home base without leaving a trace. These elements align with the level of planning seen in Al's murder. Some have pointed out a potential resemblance between Keyes and the man captured in the ATM surveillance footage, though the quality of the image makes definitive comparison difficult. The murder in 2004 also falls within the active period of Keyes' criminal career, which he claimed spanned from the late 1990s to 2012. Keyes also traveled extensively, making it plausible that he once operated in Colorado. However, this theory has several significant weaknesses. Keyes was generally known to target couples or individuals in remote locations, rather than going through an elaborate ruse to rent an apartment. Additionally, the torture methods used in Al's murder are not consistent with Keyes' known crimes. Furthermore, Keyes' confessions and timeline, while incomplete, do not specifically indicate any activity in Colorado during that period. There are many other theories, but the last one I'd like to touch on is the Balkan connection. This theory, explored by investigator Paul Holes, suggests a potential link between the killer and the Balkan region, specifically organizations like the Turkish Hezbollah. Recent analysis of the DNA found at the crime scene indicated that the killer likely had ancestry from the Balkan region, and the method used on Al's feet is said to be common in Turkey and surrounding areas, suggests potential connections to this region. There was also at least one witness who interacted with Cooper that noted a slight accent that could potentially be Romanian or from a nearby region.